You mentioned Mason Graham, two second rounders in Quinshon Judkins, Carson Schwesinger. What do you think of those picks? And when you look at them, what do you see?
Yeah, so Judkins, I guess we'll start with him, right? Because obviously, second round pick is highly drafted relative to the running back position. And I think this is a team that wants to run the ball. They just weren't able to do that last season, right? I think they ended up ranking like last in run rate last year just because they weren't able to do it, and partly because the offensive line was not good, partly because they trailed more than you'd like, and partly because they didn't have the running back to do it. And all due respect to Nick Chubb, but expecting even a back of that caliber to bounce back from the injury right away was going to be pretty hard to do, and he definitely didn't look himself, right? And Jerome Ford, I don't think they want to rely on him to lead that backfield again, and I believe he even took a pay cut this year, so he figures to kind of be that RB3 behind Judkins and even Dylan Sampson. So they made these two bigger investments via the draft to get back to running the ball ideally. I would think, and I think you need the high quality backs like a Quinshon Judkins to make up for a potentially poor offensive line, right? Which we're still kind of there on right now. And Judkins is the type of back who should be in a better position, I think, than most to make the most of that situation this year. He comes out with decent run grade for his college career, 95.2. That's a 93rd percentile mark among all running back prospects since 2018. So he's this quality runner of the football, and I think he's going to get involved even on passing downs and stuff like that. So I think that there's a lot of potential there for Quinshon Judkins to hopefully elevate their run game this year. And then obviously Dylan Sampson as a change of pace back as well. I think there's clearly an investment and a want to run the ball. So it makes sense that those guys will be big contributors here in 2025.
What do you think of Schlesinger, the pick of him? That was one that kind of surprised everybody. First pick in the second round. So they went defense, which shocked most Browns fans.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? And I think it says something too a little bit about, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's injury. Obviously, he's not going to be playing this season. I think that came out a few weeks ago or months ago. It's hard to keep track at this point, but obviously the injury sounded pretty scary for him, so he's going to miss some time. So Schwesinger, he comes into the league as one of the more inexperienced players at the position. He's played fewer than 1,000 defensive snaps in college, which is definitely low for like a highly drafted player at that position. And, one of the things that I found coaches rely on more for the linebacker position is experience, right? So I think Schlesinger will be a contributor this year. I really like him as a prospect. I think Jordan Hicks is going to be the starter as the lone full-time linebacker in Jim Schwartz's defense. Him being older is not really a factor. Like he's experienced in that defense, and even with the draft capital spent on Schlesinger, I think Hicks makes sense to lead the way. He performed really well in Jim Schwartz's defense last year. I'd written up a piece about the most underrated players on each team heading into this season, and Hicks was my pick for the Browns because he comes in with this kind of negative connotation around him with an injury history and being older, and he did miss time last year, but top 20 grades across the position for him last year. But I do think Schlesinger is going to be a contributor in year one. I think he starts as this LB2 kind of rotational starter in the defense. But if Hicks misses time again, Schlesinger's in a good spot to play an even bigger role depending on how the team feels about, Devin Bush and Jerome Baker, who they also added because they at least have starting experience as well. So Schwesinger's one of the more intriguing rookies for me this season, just because he was this tackle machine in college, but it is a smaller sample size. But even on that smaller sample size, a lot of his PFF grades across the board coming out of college were really strong as well. So I think there could be some potential there for him to eventually take over as the LB1 in this defense, which obviously you spend a high pick on him in the second round. That's probably the plan here for the future. So definitely somebody to keep an eye on for this season.